Airside driving. There's so much more to it than just driving. Whether you work at a large international airport or a small airfield, whether you drive one of these or one of these, how you go about your job has the potential to affect the safety of aircraft, passengers, aircrew and your colleagues, not to mention your own safety, of course. Working airside presents the airside driver with a large number of hazards in what is a dynamic work area, coupled with often rapidly changing environmental conditions and tight schedules to stick to. Put it all together and you have increased levels of risk. Reports from accidents and near misses involving airside vehicles have provided a better understanding of the factors that have led up to such incidents. So, this video is for you as an airside driver, and its purpose is to help you understand what you need to be aware of and what you need to do to drive airside safely. We're going to cover the legal and regulatory requirements, licenses and permits, safe vehicles and equipment, and the human factors. We're then going to head out and look at driving airside in general, and then take a closer look at driving around aircraft. It is a legal requirement under the Health and Safety at Work Act that your employer should put in place safe working procedures. Now, as an employee, you also have a responsibility to help your employer by following these procedures and reporting unsafe acts or conditions. In short, you have a responsibility to yourself and others to work safely. The consequences of not doing so aren't just about losing your job or being prosecuted. There's a very real chance that you could be responsible for a serious accident. Working in the aviation industry means you also have to comply with other specific requirements, such as local bylaws and airport operation instructions. The Civil Aviation Authority, CAA, is the UK's aviation regulator and has produced Civil Aviation Publication 790, which sets out the requirement for the safe operation of airside driving. The Health and Safety Executive also provides other guidance for managing workplace transport. Before you can drive airside, you need to hold the necessary licenses and permits for the tasks that you'll be asked to undertake. You need a full UK driving licence for the category of vehicles that you'll drive. In the case of specialist vehicles, there may not be a category, so you'll need to have a certificate of competency for that vehicle. Your employer will assess you, and if satisfied that you're competent, will then provide you with that. When you first apply to drive airside, you'll also need to be assessed to see if you're medically fit. You'll then be reassessed periodically to ensure that you remain fit for driving airside. Central to CAP 790 is an airside driving permit scheme, or ADP. You will need to hold an airside driving permit for the area in which you will be operating. Each airport will have their own scheme, but typically there are two types: airside, road and apron, an A ADP, and manoeuvring areas, an M ADP. Sometimes this will include the runway, or there may be a third type for manoeuvring areas and runway, an R ADP. Manoeuvring areas are clearly marked by solid white lines and are areas with additional hazards, hence the need for a specific ADP. You must have an M ADP to enter them and direct permission from air traffic control. You must also keep in contact with air traffic control at all times when you are in the manoeuvring and runway areas. Before we leave permits, just a reminder, it is likely that you will also require a valid airside vehicle permit for each vehicle you intend to operate. CAP 790 also says that vehicles operating airside must be of MOT standard, be maintained in good condition and be regularly inspected. That also means that you, the driver, should inspect vehicles and equipment before you start using it. If you discover any faults, you should rectify them before operating the vehicle, but only if you're competent to do so. Otherwise, you must report the problem to your manager. It stands to reason that using equipment incorrectly or when in a poorly maintained condition has to increase risk. These rules also apply to towed equipment such as aircraft steps, ground power units and trailers. Don't forget, obstruction lights are also required in operational areas. These will need to be regularly checked as well, along with other onboard equipment such as radios. The human element is crucially important in airside driving. You must be trained in the tasks that you'll be carrying out. That includes familiarity with both the vehicles and equipment you'll be using and the necessary procedures for those tasks. That's also a requirement of the ADP. It won't surprise you to learn that often accidents are caused by drivers who are not adequately trained in the tasks that they were undertaking. For some tasks, driving skills are only part of the requirement. If you need to operate radio equipment, you must have the necessary communications training, and if English is not your first language, you should have additional training to ensure that language and accents do not become a barrier to communication at a critical moment. Your general health and well-being can also have an effect on your ability to drive safely. Clearly, if you have a medical condition and are taking prescribed medication, you must make your manager aware of this. That means that you have to be sure you are safe to drive before starting work, whether or not you are receiving medical treatment. Needless to say, driving under the influence of alcohol or non-prescribed drugs is absolutely forbidden and will lead to disciplinary action if you do. Being excessively tired can also make you unsafe airside. Operational time pressures may lead to mistakes. If you have any concerns, raise it with your manager. Regular training and assessment of your driving and communication skills will make sure you are as safe as you can be. But if at any time you do not feel you can drive safely, you must tell your manager. Your employer is working to the same rules as you are, and the last thing that the airfield wants is unsafe airside drivers at any time. So, we know your vehicle is working fine and you're fit, trained and ready to do the task. Oh, and remember, smoking is not permitted anywhere airside, and check local rules and regulations regarding the use of mobile phones. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that you are familiar with the layout of the airfield. And that's not just in daylight. It'll look totally different at night with airfield lights and vehicle and aircraft movement. Driving in extreme weather conditions or when airfield weather safeguarding is in force will also be different. Take the time to learn your way around in all conditions, day and night, and keep yourself up to date with any changes. This knowledge will be crucial when you encounter other people who may not be familiar with the airside environment, such as contractors or passengers. As part of this familiarization process, you should also get to know the restricted areas that you may not be able to drive into, such as instrument landing system critical areas, holding points and stop bars. There are also areas where vehicle movement and parking is prohibited, such as around fueling vehicles, emergency exits and interstand clearways. So, now let's head across to a manoeuvring area and have a look at some of the main hazards and what you need to do to work safely. Driving around moving and stationary aircraft not only poses a threat to your own safety and that of other airside staff, but also potentially to passengers and aircrew on board an aircraft. The Air Navigation Order, which covers aviation law, makes it clear that as an airside driver, you must not endanger any aircraft either recklessly or negligently. If you do so, you may be liable to up to 5 years imprisonment, or a substantial fine, or both. Wear your PPE and wear it correctly. High-vis done up so that you can be seen from the front, not just the back. Your vehicle will have obstruction lights. Always use them so that your vehicle can be clearly seen. You'll appreciate it when you have an aircraft heading towards you. Always give way to aircraft, even if they are under tow. Interstand clearways are areas between aircraft stands that allow vehicle access to the stand. Never assume that aircraft are parked correctly on the centre line. They're not that easy to park, you know. So, before driving on the stand, always check you have enough room to get past the aircraft safely. Remember, interstand clearways are also used for emergency response vehicles tending aircraft, so they must never be obstructed. Waiting for an aircraft? Then stay inside your vehicle until it's safe to leave it. Never drive or walk behind an aircraft that has just pulled onto a stand and still has its anti-collision lights on. Be aware of jet engine danger zones, keeping well clear to avoid jet blast or possible ingestion. Likewise, keep clear of aircraft propellers and helicopter rotors. Their movement is hard to judge, so always stay well back until they are fully powered down. Never approach an aircraft until the propellers, rotors or jets stop running. The flight crew has indicated that it's safe to do so and the aircraft has been chocked. Once it is safe to approach, remember that you should never drive under the fuselage or the wings of an aircraft. You could cause damage that you may not be aware of, and that could have terrible consequences when the aircraft is in the air. Passengers embarking or disembarking from an aircraft are especially vulnerable. Never cross their routes between the aircraft and the terminal. And while we're on the subject of route planning, never drive across fuel hoses or earthing cables. Avoid driving through spillages and steer clear of empty aircraft stands. When towing tall equipment, particularly aircraft steps, ensure that they are lowered before driving under structures, and watch out for lowest height permissible signage, particularly in and around air bridges. Excess speed is a major factor in vehicle accidents and often results in serious injuries to people and damage to aircraft and property. Driving too quickly gives you less time to respond to a changing situation in high-risk areas, putting manoeuvring aircraft, other vehicles or pedestrians in danger. Towed equipment could become unstable and may overturn, or your load may become unsecure, causing damage or present a further hazard to airside users. Adverse weather, high winds, heavy rain, fog, ice, snow, slow down even more. Remember, stopping distances increase. When parking airside, make sure that you aren't creating an obstruction. Examples of this would be parking under air bridges, blocking safe evacuation routes from an aircraft, and blocking emergency cut-off switches which may be at the head of a stand. Fueling vehicles need space around them and an escape route if there's an incident. Make sure that you aren't in the way. Reversing can be a hazardous manoeuvre, so try and avoid it if possible. If you have to reverse, always use a banksman. If you leave your vehicle unattended at any time, switch off the engine and secure it. You'll need to check the specific security rules for unattended vehicles at your airfield. Part of your training will include what to do and who to contact in an emergency. However, you have a responsibility to keep yourself up to date and know the locations of emergency telephones and fuel stops. It is also vital that any incident or accident is reported. What may seem of minor importance at the time may prove crucial in preventing a serious accident. And that includes FOD, foreign object debris, which you'll have had specific instructions about. You know, this isn't just about rules, it's about everyone playing their part in keeping us all as safe as possible. How would you feel if someone failed to report an unsafe condition that caused you to be injured? The CAA encourages just culture, which is the open reporting of accidents and incidents, and your employer will too. Play your part, always report. Airside is a dynamic environment. It's fast-moving and constantly changing. It isn't possible to anticipate everything that you'll come across when driving there. But by keeping these hazards in mind, you will be better prepared to avoid them and stay safe. Here's a brief summary of what we've covered in this video. Thank you for watching, and remember to stay safe airside.